This is Malcolm Collins, and we are today here with HoMath. I think that you so articulately pull apart the problems with modern dating, particularly from a male perspective.
Mhm.
And you do it in a way that is more realistic than us, because I always have to assume that there's some way out of this. Like in
Oh,
my
yeah.
head, I'm like, okay, like it's astronomically bad right now, but there's got to
Yeah.
be like, I have to tell people things with the assumption that we save civilization.
Yeah, it's
So,
nice to feel that way if you can.
but
If you can
if you
figure out
can, yes,
how.
but that's what I want to talk about with you is
Yeah.
if you're forced to try to see a path through this for a young man or for society, how do you do it?
So for a young man, there are two ways of going about it. You can either be really selfish and you can try to figure out how to just be the harem master, because that's where things are going. Things have broken down, and if you can turn yourself into a local, I think they call it a contextual alpha, a local 10,
Huh.
then you can
Mm.
yeah, then you can just win in your small pond if you can find a pond small enough, because even out in, like, you drive 5 hours east of Portland, Oregon, and you get to towns where the girls just leave. Like, all the pretty girls are just like, well, I can get someone to ship me somewhere else. So
Yes.
Fair. Yeah.
there really aren't any small towns, any
And I
small
think
ponds anymore.
this is what people do. Like, I did this a lot in high school around like subgroups. Like, it's,
Yeah.
oh, you want to hang out with the goths because there isn't like a Chad in the goth group yet.
Yeah. That's why the goths do that, because it's about the makeup and not about, like, competing. It's just like it's a
Yeah.
way to jump off to the side and say I'm the top of something else. So there's that, and then there's trying to fix society. This one's easier. It's easier, it's more rewarding. Trying to fix society is what I'm trying to do, because I wouldn't find any satisfaction in this. I don't see any reason to accelerate the problem if it's going to cause, it causes society to break down,
Yeah.
and I don't want to live in a broken down society. I find it very unpleasant. So I'm trying to fix it, and I'm doing that by, I don't know if you guys are aware that I have a subscription product based on this mind map that I made called Self Maps.
No, go into this. I want to learn
Yeah.
more.
So I was promising people to make a map, like, really, really early on when I was making content. I said I was going to cover everything that you need to maximize about yourself in order to, get the best possible position you can in the dating market. And I started doing this, and I said, well, everything is kind of tied to everything else. So I needed to make an entire system of how the mind works. It starts with what you want. What you want moves into the way that you think, and then the things you think about move into the behaviors you choose and the way you appear to others, which interact with your environment, create your situation, and then you view it, and then you can think about that again, change what you want or change what you do. So
Yeah.
I just put it all on paper, and I have a couple of developers who are coding this into a system. So you can go to the site and type in, like, I don't know what I want, and there's a what do you want exercise, and it figures out what you want. And then it
Ooh.
says, well, what are you doing, and where would you go to get what you want? So it leads you through the process.
Mhm.
So this is how far I'm going to try to fix society. I'm creating AI apps that are $10 a month, so that people can go, how do I pick myself up out of this mess? And I'm going to fill it with exercises, and I'm going to try to structure it as much as possible to not let people use it in that way, to
Yeah,
people.
I
Go
love
ahead.
this because it is very similar to the system that we did in our first book ages
Yeah.
ago. We built a system for like improving yourself, and it's very similar
Yes.
to what you structured there,
Yeah.
which is to say, we say first decide like what you think has intrinsic value, and we
Yeah.
go through all the things a person might think has value, then build your like ideological tree of how you see reality, which will
Yeah.
have like a core stump that might be like a theology or might be
Hmm.
like a political worldview, and then it branches into micro hypotheses. And then with these two things, craft the version of yourself that would best be able to maximize your things of intrinsic value.
Yeah.
Because people always like, oh, be who you really are. And I'm like, there is no who you really are. That's just like who the world serendipitously made you.
That's funny, because these are things that I have been saying recently. I have a video I'm working on called The Table. Are you familiar with the dating language? How the guys will say, what do you bring to the table? And the girls will say, I am the
Yes.
table. Yeah.
Okay.
So the male version of that is, I want her to like me for me. And I'm making a video that's based on, there's no you. There's only
Mm.
things people can see about you, and
Yeah.
you can control some of those. So that's interesting that you said that, and at the same time had the same idea for the structure of how this works. I said recently, I think on a tweet, probably I tweet a lot. I said that when you find the truth, it's always the same truth as everyone else who found the truth, because the
Hmm.
truth is true.
Yeah. I completely agree. Another thing that we say in that book that probably aligns with stuff that you said before
Mhm.
is everyone is you are a side character in everyone else's life you have ever met. And if you
Yeah,
try to
yeah.
structure the you that they're interacting with to be a main character, you're going to come off like a Mary Sue. And side characters are simplistic. They have easy to understand flaws. They fit into stereotypes. And if
Mhm.
you can craft yourself into that type of person, you're going to fit much easier into the life of whether it's a woman or somebody else, because they're going to have a slot they can fit you in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're talking about kind of like development, like ego development there, that
Yeah.
people tend to think of, they begin life thinking about themselves and their needs. And I made a video recently about the maturity crisis and about how people are not climbing up the levels of development. This is just a short,
Yeah.
I'm going to print out a whole page, but are you familiar with Ken Wilber?
No, I don't think either of us are.
No, what does he
He
do?
Did
he
he like
made a
coin this like term, the maturity crisis? I mean, we're all talking
no.
about infantilization, but
Yeah, no, he conglomerated a bunch of different systems of like spirituality and psychological development and so on and so forth. He has a system called all quadrant, all level. This is my depiction of the quadrants. It's about how you have to, if you're looking at a situation, you have to understand the interior of your mind, the outer of the experience, and then the collective of both, so the culture and the system. And then there's also developmental psychology, which is the part that people are always the most interested in. And the maturity crisis is, I don't know if I coined that term. I might have heard a few people use it, but I don't know who they were. And it's basically that what's happening right now is we live in a culture where everybody is, especially the men, are not growing up to the level where it would be, if you're using the Lawrence Kohlberg level set of levels, that would be law and order morality. And men are not growing up to that. They're staying in the good boy morality. So you're seeing a bunch of grown men who are like, look at me, I'm doing the nice thing. And that doesn't work. It doesn't
Yeah.
keep society going. Men typically develop more than women on average. Women tend to stay on average in the good girl stage, and men move into the law and order stage. And that would be levels 3 and 4 out of 6. But now we're seeing a lot of people stay in the lower stages.
So I think that you've captured something really huge here that I want to pull out,
Yeah.
which is to say that if we look at the challenges that we're facing as a society right now, in part within dating markets and stuff like that, it's true. It's not just easy. It's also true to look at the market and say, well, the market has the switching costs are too low for women right now, and it leads to all of these problems if you're a man dating and everything like that. But
Yeah.
these are things that you and I cannot fix. So we've got to look at the bigger structural problems. And what the biggest structural problem that society has right now is that people are not given the mental scaffolding and tools to build complex metaphysical frameworks for right and wrong and about structuring their lives.
Yeah.
And ironically, I think a lot of this came, I'm going to say, like, from, I don't know if you're our, like, the religious, like, right side created a lot of this problem in the 80s and 90s when they were like, kids can't be taught anything other than the metaphysical framework I'm giving them at home in school. And so the school then stopped teaching all of that stuff. And they became afraid to talk about like meaning and purpose and why you exist. And so then the home life became secular. And now all of a sudden that entire framework, both the school and the home, is giving people no reason to exist.
Right, exactly. We no longer have any cultural cohesion around meaning, and that is, it's very ironic because it actually stems from a pretty high level of development. The sixth one here, I gave them rainbow colors to make them easier to remember. The Wilbur system is, everybody makes a different set of levels, and they call them beige and tangerine and all kinds of nonsense no one can remember. So at level 6, what has happened since the 60s, this was the first emergence of it, this is like ancient, this is like homeless people, this is like tribes, this is like the Roman Empire, this is like medieval times, industrial times, and the information age, basically.
Hmm.
And the morality that emerged around the 1960s, beginning in the very late industrial, early information age, is that there's any way to look at things. Anyone can look at things anyway, and it's all valid. So
Yeah.
that's a very high level of development, but it also means that you can't run a school, you can't run a government because everyone disagrees on what's the right way to see things. And if all you ever do is talk about, well, here's how I see it, here's how I see it, then people never actually learn the rules. So this level tends to dissolve this one so people cannot climb the ladder. That's a running theme for millennials and Gen Z and whoever comes next, that they're not able to climb the ladder of wealth and of maturity and of they're not replacing the boomers in their jobs because they don't have the skills. They seem to have cut out the path upwards in
Fascinating.
development.
I want to hear your thoughts on something I feel I've been seeing recently, which is the rise of what I call, and where would it be on this chart, of aesthetic morality. Where, like, a lot of people, when they're breaking morality systems down, it'll be like, oh, it might be a consequentialist morality, it might be a deontological morality. But then I've noticed this new morality where when people are asking what they should do or what choice they should make, it's about fulfilling a specific aesthetic vision of what a good version of themselves is. And an example of this, when it really hit me that some people were doing this, is I was watching this influencer Hamza, who's like a masculine
Mhm.
world, sort of like an Andrew Tate type influencer. And he was talking about
Yeah.
one difficult decision he had in his life about, like, should he move to the city or the countryside for like where he was working? And then he asked himself, what was the most masculine decision? Like, a man, what would the
Hmm.
man do in this context? And I started
Right.
to, as soon as I saw him say that, I started to realize that so many of the influencers who are packaging systems of like how to act for people package it around some aesthetic ideal, whether it is what would a good Christian do, or what would a man do, or what would a woman do. And we've even gotten to this state where we've confused genders with moral ideals.
Yeah. When you say aesthetic, is that a word I should know?
Aesthetic, I'm mispronouncing the word aesthetic. Like
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, aesthetic, like visual, like sensory.
Yeah, but also,
yeah,
I
like
mean,
a
I think
visual.
he means identity. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
people also have become incredibly obsessed with their identities, their brands, as though, okay, this is
Yeah.
now my identity. I need to change everything about my life to fit it.
Yeah.
And all of my
Yeah.
decisions are going to be downstream of what conforms with this identity,
It would be
rather than
Yeah.
my core
I understand what you
values.
mean now.
And
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I understand what you mean now. Sorry about that. I think that what you're talking about is people that are so desperate for identity that they're buying like prepackaged, almost like a brand name. Like they just want to, like a
Mhm.
box of pancake mix that you just stir and you have a thing. They're just like, I just want to buy a thing.
Yeah.
And so they go to Andrew Tate University and then they go, I'm Andrew Tate now. That's my identity, is I'm just going to be the next Andrew Tate. I opened this up on my computer, by the way. I had a larger map that I made of the Wilbur levels. So yeah, it's large. I'm going to make it printable at some point. But yeah, I've noticed that as well, that people are purchasing identity, especially when they have less of it. And
Mhm.
that comes from people who recently immigrated uh, into a country, and
Hmm.
people
Yeah.
who don't have strong parenting and who don't come from any kind of tradition. And it seems like almost like deliberately we don't have any form of enduring identity now.
Well, don't you also
So
think it's
yeah,
kind of
I'm not sure
a
if I
failure?
caught the whole question,
Like,
but
No,
don't
I
you think
think
it's a failure to become an adult? Because I feel like as kids, we tend to like to
yeah,
buy identities, right? Like, I'm a goth, or I'm an e-girl now, or whatever. And then as we
yeah,
grow up, we
yeah.
discover, like, oh, wait, I have inherent values and can kind of make my own self in the world. And also the way I manifest, I don't have to be part of a team.
well, I
Like,
think
I
we
think
used
it's
to have
maybe part of this
systems.
Right.
infantilization that you're talking about too.
Yeah.
I think we used to have systems
Yeah,
for
it
doing
is.
that. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. I this was part of the video that I was talking about with the maturity crisis, how I just drew these three different versions of what you can be as an adult. You can either be just the man child or the guy who's just getting wrecked because you have all of the responsibility and you get nothing for it. But there's a way through that. I'm trying to encourage people because it's true, the system is just not helping people grow up. If you go to college, you get in debt, and then you go into the work world, you just get used. And I don't know how to teach people how to run businesses. I'm trying to teach people to get good at something that they can't take away from you. So you can grow up and be mature and develop competence without spending all your time just being soaked for all of your living energy.
Yeah.
But we are having a lot of, I don't really know what to say to them when they show up in my comments and my, in my mentions or whatever. I don't know what to tell these guys. Like, hey, stop enjoying your life and go do something hard that doesn't work. You know?
Well, one of the things, and I have like, this is not your attitude with this stuff, but it's one that I've been beginning to adopt more and more. Is and we talked about this in a recent, like, the genocide of males video, where I'm like, there was a period in human history, if you go to the early agricultural period, where one man was breeding for every 14 women.
Yeah.
And even if you look at the past generation, 60%, I think it was like 62% of males had kids, and something like 82% of women had kids. And it's like, we males are biologically designed to be disposable by society.
Yes.
And people come to me and they go, what's the system that's going to win for every male? And I'm like,
no.
It's not gonna win for every male. But
Yeah.
part of the cool thing about it is the core reason why a lot of males are going to fail is not looks or height or anything like that. That I think, to an extent, biologically, or due to what happened to them before in their life, they're not able to engage with the types of systems that you're putting in front of them. They're not able to say, okay, now I'm going to do the hard thing.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not having an opportunity to do that, for sure.
I want to... Oh, continue.
I think I can see Simone speaking, but I can't hear her.
You're muted, Simone.
Sorry, I'm next to a baby and she's also trying to join in, and I'm trying to keep her. But I'm thinking about this and trying to think what I would do if I were a dude, and I would probably want to know with some certainty what bucket I'm in. Like, am I in the bucket of people who are going to reproduce and have success, or should I go into basically the MGTOW bucket and just have a really good life, kind of live mostly off the grid, hike, have a dog, collect cars, like ride my motorcycle, have a good time, and then, like, euthanize myself so I don't die alone and get eaten by my dog or something.
Yeah, kind of. That's a lot of them also don't have the money to do those things. Like, they're never getting a motorcycle, So it's not only are they not going to make it with the ladies, but they also are like delivering pizza 10 hours a week and living with mom.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to say to them. I don't know if I have a drawing of it. I guess I'll draw it while I'm talking to you. But I keep giving them the same image over and over, the same symbol, which I'm using for SelfMax, my product, is just a red upward pointing arrow to symbolize that really, no matter where you are and what you're doing in life, all living things have to be going somewhere. You have to be growing because everything else around you is moving. So you have to be headed somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's what like, if you can cultivate that mindset, then everything else will naturally emerge from it. I don't know what specifics to tell most of these people, but if I can at least give them the attitude of, I should be looking for something, like, instead of sitting on the couch. And there's just a lot going on in the younger generations that I think the older ones don't get. Like, Gen Z tells me that nobody leaves the house anymore. I tell them, you should go do events and go out and go be public. And they say, but you get there and it's just like 3 dudes,
Yeah,
and
honestly though, like,
everyone's on
have
their
you
phone,
been out recently? It
I
sucks.
haven't.
They're not wrong.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
this happened to me recently, where I went to a thing with my kids, right? Like, I remember when I was a kid, I'd go to like a birthday party. So I went to a birthday party. Not a single parent talked to each other the entire time. All of them were there with phones. Like, I don't even think it's like just Gen Z. Like, we as a society have just been like, why do you... And so as Gen Z, they're having this problem. And what I wanted to ask you about is, but almost like, what next? Because, you're talking about the guy on the moped and everything like that. As we see AI take more and more jobs, how do you think, like, dating markets adapt to that? How do you think that people, because we need to be asking these questions ourselves. Like, anyone who's young today is like, okay, given where AI is going to be in 15 years, what skill do I learn? What do I do? How do you think about that?
I don't think about it. That's scary. Thanks for ruining my day. Yeah, that's I really don't know what people are going to do that's going to be worth anything. I think that eh, as we automate everything, like we've lost our manufacturing, I don't know if we're getting it back. If AI actually does grow to the point where the lower levels of intellectual labor are not needed, and maybe even higher ones, maybe we have AI lawyers at some point.
Oh,
If
we will. No, I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
like Harvard MBAs, Stanford
Mhm.
MBAs are already seeing pretty severe delays in the rates at which they're getting hired. These are
Yeah.
the top MBA
I
programs.
think that the Harvard, it was
Yeah.
13% of last year's class is unemployed right now.
That's
Yeah, and
crazy.
like they'll eventually get jobs for now. Well, I don't know, maybe. But like no, we're talking like white collar elite jobs are not going to exist anymore. But anyway, carry on. Yeah.
Well, sure. Do we know that's because of AI, or is it just like it
It's
seems
because of
like people
AI.
are?
It's because of
Yeah.
AI. If you listen
Yeah.
to like the Altman podcast, for example, like these VCs and CEOs are like, oh man, yeah, like I'm now using ChatGPT's premium feature to do work that I
Ah,
used to hire like McKinsey to do
I
at like,
see.
$50,000. And it's
Yeah,
doing it
that's
in
the
two
part that I
hours.
hadn't heard. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
No. Like
really, yeah.
it is exceptional work. Like
Yeah.
being an analyst now, basically, like,
Hmm.
sorry, you're done. Being a lawyer, forget that. Like lawyer
Yeah.
stuff's easy. The one thing that's going to be hard is like managing court cases, like civil and criminal court cases
Yeah.
in the court of law. But that's honestly very easily surmountable. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're screwed.
Yeah, I think people are going to have to learn to either, not want things or go farm, go homestead. Because if we have a technology infrastructure that gets everything done without as many people needing to do it, then well, we can't all be delivering each other Uber Eats.
Yeah.
If you're delivering Uber Eats, you don't make enough money to buy Uber Eats. So I don't know if we're gonna get unlimited. What was it? Universal basic income. I guess it's
Yeah.
unlimited. I don't know if we're gonna get that, but if we do, I don't think that's very good either. Because the leftist view of things is that that things happen like this by themselves. Like capitalism, the money goes to the top, the female attention goes to the
Yeah.
top. It's sort of nature just does that. And the leftist solution is, well, why don't we just like redistribute it down to the bottom? And if you do that, then the worst examples of humanity thrive as much as the best. There has to be something
Yeah.
that differentiates quality people from low quality people.
Yeah. Well,
Did you
also it's not persistent. Like every time that has been attempted, the elite groups or the descendants of elite groups that got disenfranchised end up like taking over.
She's
again.
talking about in China where they basically inverted society, and if you
Yeah.
look today at the people in government positions, they're actually the distant kids of like the people who are disenfranchised. But I think a more interesting thing, are you familiar with the Sam Altman UBI study and what happened with that?
No.
Oh, it's so crazy. Okay, so they for 3 years gave out $1,000 a month to one group of people, and then to another group it was $50 a month, so they could sort of control for the two groups. The
Mhm.
group that was given $1,000 a month at the end of the experiment had what was it, $30,000 less in total wealth.
And I think it was just like
Wow.
$3,000. It wasn't that much, but basically they worked less. They didn't spend more time with their children,
Yeah.
and they had materially less wealth,
And
which
it
So
was
they
there
just
was
got lazy.
yeah, they
Yeah,
got lazy. They got lazy.
There was another study done on this recently that sort of backed up this result that we'll probably do another episode on. But it drew me recently when I was thinking about this. Like, what happens if you have UBI intergenerationally? And somebody on YouTube had a really insightful thing here where they were looking at Native American communities that had gotten massive government grants for like intergenerationally, and how
Mhm.
that destroyed the communities entirely. And it
Yeah.
made me realize just how badly UBI can rot a culture if you
Yeah.
attempt to do it multiple generations in a row.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've had families in America. We've had generations and generations of people who have been just on welfare. I think that that's going on in a lot of inner cities. I think that's been going on in Appalachia for a while, like ever since they gutted the manufacturing industry. The entire Rust Belt is just kind of on food stamps. I think that's I don't know how you get out of that. I don't know what we do about it. There has to be some way to make people do this, to make people, try something, and then separate them out into people that succeed and people that don't. And the people that don't succeed, you can't have like 90% of them starving, because then they're just going to get angry. I don't know what I know what the principles are. I don't know what the
We see how it's
details
going to
are.
play out if things don't change, actually. Like, I think it's pretty simple. Is one, we do get some form of UBI. Like, everyone will be fed. And two, it's actually not going to be that expensive to keep people, we'll say, like, not violent radicals, because basically between AI and like just really good virtual environments, they're going to be living in sort of fantasy worlds where they do live a good life and have their virtual girlfriends and boyfriends and you know, children and whatever. So they're out living a fantasy that's not real, but in essentially they're just kind of like being euthanized early.
Yeah.
They don't have kids. They basically don't inherit the future, and they also sort of opt out of reality because they're no longer working. They're only basically consuming money and food and living in their little pleasure pod of, you know, virtual AI driven fantasy. Then there's this small subset of society that does like catch the red arrow. They move upward. Maybe some of them air gap and become like Amish and sort of like you were saying, homestead and live off the land. Maybe there are some other groups that choose to build some form of agency in the world that is useful to AI and compliant with it. And then of course there's like the very, very elite that are empowered by the AI and that utilize it and live in their world cities. But basically, like, all those people at the bottom are basically, they're just being genocided. I don't know how else to put it, but like they're just going to be wiped out. They will not exist. And it's not just men, it's women too, but it's certainly way more men than women.
Oh, it's going to be, it'll be like 80% of the male population and
if not
probably
more.
probably about half of the women.
Yeah.
Seeing that that's roughly the number that are, you know, empowering themselves by not having kids.
Exactly. And I think some people hear this and they're like, come on, are we really going to move into a society where rich men take like 11 wives? I'm like, excuse me, do we have Elon here? Do we have Andrew Tate in the room? Like,
it's not even that though. Like when you look at, and I can't remember the exact number of like men who have children versus women who have children, what, like 60% of men in the
I already
US
gave that
have
statistic in this. It's 60 to 80%.
Okay, yeah. And so yeah, just the point that like men already are basically, they're not having concurrent wives or partners at the same time, but just like the serial partnering is the same thing functionally.
Yeah, the more desirable men just have an easier time. And that's just the way that nature works. That's how walruses do it too. I put them in my last video about it.
Yes.
And we have to accept some degree of that, but at the same time, you have to have enough people doing the stuff that, like, I don't know, when are we going to be at the point where we have robots planting the seeds, harvesting the crops, bringing them to the truck, bringing them to the processing plant, processing them all the way until someone has to eat them. And then if the robots are doing that, then who's eating the food? Then, because there's no one's needed to do the jobs.
I think we're basically already there with crops. I mean, crops right now it's one guy on like an automated system doing what used to be
there's really, really high variance. Some crops are 100% handpicked still. Some are, to a great extent, depending on the farm, completely machine picked. And it's really impressive to see some of these machines that are like very, very advanced and granular. But
I've seen some pretty interesting ones.
I love that stuff. It's so dumb.
It's so fun. Yeah, they have one that knocks only the green potatoes out as they throw them in. Yeah.
Oh God, I love that. But I think the thing is, people are so not ready for this.
Yeah.
And it is going to blindside our society.
I want to talk about women for a second here. What would you do? So we've got 2 girls right now. What would you be telling a daughter if you were raising one?
Oh boy, that's interesting. If I was raising, well, how old is she?
Well, you're looking at one of them and then the other one is not much older.
Okay. Well, I'd be telling them to like wipe your mouth, I guess. I don't know. But if she was getting old enough that she was going to be making her own decisions, which is I think what you're getting at. Yeah, I think what I would say is I would tell her how men think. And I've got something on that in here somewhere. I would explain to her how the world works, how people think, what she can expect to be treated like, and the reasons for that, so that she's equipped to make the best possible decisions. I don't know if I'm going to find this thing in time. There it is. There was a video I made a while ago about a young girl displaying a good amount of insight, where she was first of all sick of her dad saying, "Oh, boys, don't go around boys," and then she realized that he's doing that because he knows what the boys think about her. So she had a thought about a thought about a thought, which was a, higher level of a higher
Mhm.
order of thinking than a lot of people her age. And I was like, oh, that's great. And that's the kind of thing that I would be saying. I would be trying to install that kind of metacognition.
Mm.
I would be saying, if you show up this way, the world will react to you this way. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. That's what people's programming is. That's what I did not get taught when I was a kid. My
I like
parents,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
my parents and my teachers failed to tell me how the world was going to react to me. It was almost 100%. You can do what you want.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
What
Absolutely.
a crazy thing to tell someone.
that's insane. The world does not agree. It just doesn't
No.
agree with you. Oh, I want to be a journalist. Okay, here's $10.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we did a video on it hasn't gone live yet. We titled it "Thought Maxing Our Daughters," but the question is, how do you one of I think the biggest mistakes that people are going to make in raising daughters within this generation is they're like, well, you don't want to be valued for your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that the world right now is social media. It's
Mm-hmm.
YouTube, it's Twitter, it's etc. And if you're a woman with a following on one of these sites, you are in part valued for your body.
Yeah.
And if
Well,
you
we all are. Yeah.
yeah, if you pathologically develop some hatred of this or fear of this, then you're not going to get in front of a large audience and have an impact.
Right. Yeah. That's part of. It's kind of a part of what I'm trying to teach people with the whole Ken Wilber, the whole integral thing, this whole thing here,
Mhm.
that you can't just say, oh, it's bad to value people for their bodies or it's bad to be valued for your body. That's just like one of the layers of thinking that people do, whether you like it or not. It's
Yeah.
just a part of the mind that's on. You have to understand that that's what people are doing, and you have to take the good you can get from it and avoid the bad that comes from it. Whereas I think what you were saying is that if you get too averse to that, then you won't be able to function in the online world, right? Like if you understand that if you're an attractive young girl, people will partially be watching because you are an attractive young girl, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that you're not going to be able to avoid, even if you're purely intellectual. Like the example I use here is like Shoe on Head. Shoe
Mhm.
on Head is like a reasonable intellectual with
Yeah.
reasonable ideas that are worth listening to. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean that part of her audience isn't there because she at one point was an attractive young girl.
Yeah, but she also isn't like, at least not as far as I've seen. I don't think she's leaning on it. She's not
No,
like
no, no,
wearing
no.
skimpy clothes or anything like that. So she's
No,
just
more like a
attractive, and
Brett
yeah.
Cooper. Yeah.
Yeah, and that happens everywhere all the time. That's attractive people, which there's fewer men than women, but if you're attractive, people will look at you more. And even babies do that. So it's
Well,
just like that's how we're built. So yeah, accept it.
it's actually a very interesting thing when I think about it for men, because I think attractive men, there's like an audience of intellectual men where you need a certain level of buffness to enter it. Like I'm thinking
Yeah.
like your Joe Rogans, your Chris Williamsons, stuff
Mhm.
like that,
Yeah.
where they're like genuine intellectuals in my book, but like it's clear that their audience required first a level of physical mastery, which I
Yep.
guess is a level of self-mastery.
Yeah.
A level of, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Well, their level of physical mastery is a level of self-mastery. Like
Yes,
it's a
yeah,
reflection
it
of that.
demonstrates competence, yeah.
But I think it also signals more to the gender to which they market
Yeah.
than the opposite gender. In other words, like I think Andrew Tate
Being a
physically
fighter, yeah.
appeals more to men than he
Yeah.
does to women. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
like Hannah Nealman of Ballerina Farms physically appeals more to women than to men.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys followed my content this deeply or this early, but I have a story that I tell sometimes about that's what happened to me. Early in life, when people told me you can do and be whatever you want and people should like you for you, I didn't really pay attention or take care of myself. And I had a physical transformation. I lost a lot of weight and built a lot of muscle. And this same girl that I liked since I was 11, suddenly the tables turned and she was into me. And I was like, I don't know about that.
Ah!
And
Amazing.
yeah, and people don't understand how big of a difference that makes until you are one and then the other. People will just say, "Oh yeah,
That's
people
the
like
one.
attractive people." Yeah, yeah,
Malcolm did that to me. Malcolm taught me that people judge you by what you are on the outside, when I was like, it's
Mm-hmm.
all about what you are on the inside. And while
Yeah.
we were dating, with the promise that we'd break up at the end, because that was
Mm-hmm.
our agreement, I was going to be single forever. I was excited
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Yeah.
He was like, well, you're not going to achieve your goal in life if you look like you do right now. And so I changed my appearance totally, got a promotion, like got invited to speak at events, just complete transformation of my entire career. And people who knew me from before and hadn't seen what I looked like after were like, that's not true. You didn't
Well,
get that
I think the
promotion.
problem for
Yeah.
you and for women is that women especially get emotionally rewarded for dressing in a way and acting in a way that causes people to think less of them intellectually. So she was dressing like a hipster, in those sorts of outfits, that sort of like far, and people were rewarding her and smiling more at her.
Well,
And
I
so
was
she
wearing
felt
like mini skirts and red fishnet stockings,
Yeah.
and like it was not great. Not great.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, it's
I don't know though. Like, do hypermuscular men also somewhat get treated?
Yes, I did get treated like a male thought, kind of, when I went from, like, I lost a lot of weight and put on the muscle. It was really quick. And all of a sudden there were like older ladies making sex jokes at me, like I used to make at girls when I was really like in high school. So I joined this program, like a spiritual program, and there were like 47-year-old ladies saying something about telling me that I should wear a G-string or whatever. I remember jokes
oh
about
my
that.
God!
Yeah. And so, like, I suddenly was getting sexualized by people who I did and did not want attention from. And I was like, oh, that's what women are talking about. You get the attention you want and the attention that you don't. Okay.
That's fascinating.
That's really interesting.
Okay, so the final thought I wanted to end this with, or to sort of think about, is this AI app that you're creating, because I think it's really
Yeah.
amazing. We're building a video game world right now, and one of the settlements that makes it through in the video game world trains an AI on scripture, and basically just, this is what happens to the Mormon faction. They basically live in a community where an AI, they go, they ask it what they should do, what they should want, and it's one of the only factions that seems to be working broadly. And so
Mhm.
I'm wondering how you think about people may interact with AI systems like the one you're building for building purpose and self-improvement. What are your thoughts on that? Because that's such a weird thing to be happening.
Yeah, I think that if this goes the way I want it to, because I don't really understand AI that well, and sometimes I get very frustrated with some of them. Like I can't get Grok to get the pictures right sometimes, and it's just like, no, I said without Superman, and it just gives me Superman again. There are things that maybe they'll get fixed in time. I don't know if they're going to train them to understand language better, but what I'm hoping we can do with AI is to, like, what I'm doing with my life right now is I'm telling young people what no one told me when I was young. It would have really helped me if someone could have said, "Hey, girls do this and bosses do that, and the people don't respect you if you do this and that," and it would have cleared a lot up for me. If AI can do that for people individually, and they can interact with a system that, like, knows everything that humanity does. It knows all of our phenotypes and all the genotypes and all of the minds that it builds, and it can test your personality and say, well, if you're like this, then that's one of the things that we're doing with SelfMax. Is we have the big five. We're going to put other personality tests on it. So the AI uses your personality to respond to you. So it says, this solution might work better for you because you're this personality type. I think if that sort of understanding of the human condition can get sophisticated enough in AI, then it will be able to lead people to the right decisions. So there's just less mystery in figuring things out. You still have to do it. Nobody can do it for you because that's just the physical nature of the world. Is you have to do it yourself, or you can't be what you want to be if you don't do the things it takes to be it. But I think that the best case scenario is that AI becomes really good at separating the wheat from the chaff. So, like, here's what you should listen to about Andrew Tate, and here's what you shouldn't. Like, this is, if you do this, this is what it's going to get you. It worked for him, but that's very rare. And most of the time that people think like that, they end up in jail for dealing drugs or whatever. So, it should be able to meet people where they are, tell them about what they're thinking, why they're thinking it, make it clear to them. That's one of the things that I'm really good at. I used to do personal life coaching sessions. I might go back to that. And during the sessions, I was very able to take whatever it was that people were experiencing and show them, here's what you're going for there that you didn't know. And they would go, oh yeah, I either need to learn how to do that better or to quit that because that's unhealthy or something like that. But it can reveal people to themselves when you do that. And then also when they become conscious of that, then they can make more and more choices about their behavior. And then it can also tell them about how the world works, which I have absolutely no experience in because I've been inside reading books for 20 years.
That is fantastic. Well, it's been a joy having you on. I really encourage our watchers to go check your channel, go check this app. Where can they find out this? It's called
selfmax.ai. I think I wrote it down here. I'll write it down. Selfmax, selfmax.ai. If you type that in, I'm pretty sure it's the first thing you're going to get. And we're building it, upgrading it. People are saying they like it so far. And
I'm excited about that. I like that. When we read The Pragmatist Guide to Life, the biggest thing was like, all right. So you've like given me a guide to like figuring this out by myself. But like now, like, what do I do? Like, can you just tell me what to do?
Yeah.
And I love that this is like, all right, well, based on like, if we're going to sort of take a Bayesian approach using like the data you've given us, here's your best path forward. Just a lot of people really would love that. I think that's all. I kind of want to check it out now. But yeah, your channel is so great. Even like if you're part of the like 10% of our channel that's female, you should also check it out. Like it's really, really interesting. And to the point of like you should be able to think from the perspective of other people. This is a great way for you to see in very concrete terms the dynamics that make life really hard for dudes. So yeah, anyway, really love your work. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.